everyone, it's Charlotte and Caitlin, and we want to talk a little bit about the SAG-AFTRA strike and what it means for Sky Talkers.
The SAG-AFTRA strike has started about a month ago now at the time that we're recording this. If you're not following us on social media, we've posted a little bit about the plans for Sky Talkers during this strike, but we thought it was best to kind of come on the actual podcast and talk a little bit about the strike itself and kind of what it means for Sky Talkers going forward. To put it kind of bluntly, we are going on kind of a full hiatus right now during the SAG-AFTRA strike, and that is not fun, honestly, but it is what we feel is the right move right now. Obviously, we want to stand in solidarity with what's going on in Hollywood with both SAG-AFTRA and the WGA, who is also on strike right now. And the SAG-AFTRA has released a lot of FAQs about different types of, basically content creators. So for influencers and podcasters, which we kind of felt like we fell into both categories. And after reviewing what they had to say about, talking about struck work from struck studios, et cetera, it really felt like the best option for Charlotte and I and for the podcast, and to show solidarity with what was going on right now and our support of the things that these actors and writers want. It felt like going on hiatus during this strike was the best option for us.
Yeah, and it's not a move that we really want to make, but it feels like the move that is the right move for standing in solidarity. And I think that there has been, and I want to address the fact that it's been a month since the strike happened and we haven't said anything on the podcast. But to be honest, we didn't know if the strike would be over the next day, if it would be a week, if it would be 2 weeks. It has now been almost a month. And it felt like the moment we put out something, maybe that would be null and void. And who knows, that could still happen. And we really hope it does, because I think we want to get back to talking about the stuff that we love. And we want also the actors and the writers and the people who make the stuff that we love and have been on our podcast and everything like that, right? We want them to get a fair contract. So I think that for us, this makes the most sense. And again, it has been a kind of a confusing experience to see how we could continue to make content during this time. And it sort of came down to, well, we'd be talking about a struck studio. And it just felt like we had to go across the board. And I know that some other podcasts and other content creators are figuring out how this works for them. But I think you know us, and you know that if we're talking about something that would be considered outside of what you would consider struck work, maybe an animated series or something, and which the details of that are a little confusing to me at this point, if I'm being completely honest, we would still talk about how it related to something that would be considered struck work. That's just how our podcast works. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to cut corners and give you a product and a piece of content that we feel like we're cutting some essential pieces out of.
Yeah, I think, specifically when it comes to like animated TV shows and publishing, there's honestly, like Charlotte mentioned, a lot of confusion, I think, in the podcasting space right now about what is allowed, what is not considered struck work. Yeah, it's confusing, honestly. And a lot of podcasts are interpreting it differently. And we are not trying to pass judgment on any podcasts that are choosing to cover animated TV shows and publishing right now, because some of the information that's come out from SAG-AFTRA right now has said that that is okay, because like animation is in a separate guild. But like Charlotte mentioned, for us personally on Sky Talkers, we're always talking about things that are happening in other parts of the Star Wars universe. And it would be very difficult for us to have a conversation, say, about Rebels, for example, and just keep it to Rebels specifically and not talk about anything else that has happened within the films or within live action TV shows or upcoming live action TV shows. And we talked a lot actually about, okay, should we try to do episodes like that, for our Rebels rewatch, where we just keep it to Rebels? And ultimately we decided that it would be better to wait rather than put out, for lack of a better word, like a censored episode about something like Rebels, or even with the High Republic, thinking about the Acolyte or Young Jedi Adventures, things like that. So it was something that we talked a lot about. And like I said, that was the decision we came to for Sky Talkers, and other shows are going to do it differently. And staying within the SAG-AFTRA guidelines as they exist right now. I think that's totally fair. We both do, but it felt like the right call for us and the way that we like to do our episodes and talk about Star Wars and, the big picture of everything. So that kind of felt like what we needed to do on our show.
Yeah, and you might be wondering, you guys aren't in you aren't in SAG, so what does it even matter to you?
Yeah.
We don't want to discount any sort of future in which we could be in SAG. And not a lot of people know this, but there are influencer contracts under SAG, there are podcast contracts under SAG. And say in the future we were able to make Sky Talkers a thing that was our entire livelihood, we don't want to X out something that could support us in the future. And I don't know what that could look like, but I don't want to break any guidelines for something that could be helpful for us in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to close any doors that could potentially be there in the future, along with, supporting what's going on right
Mhm.
now for these writers and actors that are currently on strike. I think we also wanted to be clear, as we kind of consider ourselves kind of in that influencer and podcast category, that we have never been paid by Lucasfilm or Disney for any of the content that we've made, for any interviews that we've done, for any premieres or events that we've gone to. We've never been paid for any of those things. I think you guys know when we went on Star Cruiser, that was paid for, but we did not get paid for that. And there was no expectation as far as how we covered that event that we went to. So we also wanted to make sure that there was kind of full transparency about what has or
Yeah.
hasn't happened with Sky Talkers and our relationship to these studios. So that is kind of, that's kind of that on that.
Mhm.
It feels weird to talk about, but
I know.
I don't know.
It's also shouldn't be a surprise though, because we've been very transparent about the Star
Yeah,
Cruiser stuff. If you
have listened to that
listen to
episode.
that, which a lot of people have.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we stand right now. We thought, honestly, we kind of talked about this earlier too, or Charlotte mentioned it about waiting about a month to post this announcement on the actual podcast feed. And I think kind of secretly we were hoping that
Wrap up.
that there would be a fair deal made before we needed to do this, because we love podcasting, so it's hard to kind of put a full stop on everything. But hopefully through this discussion, you guys know that it's something we've thought a lot about and something we feel strongly about. And as soon as we're able to podcast again, as soon as a fair deal is made, then we'll be back.
We'll be back, baby.
We'll be back.
And our plan is to bank a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So the moment we're able to, we'll be back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so obviously, I'm sure some of you are looking forward to our summer series. That'll probably going to be a fall series now.
Yeah.
But maybe, who knows? Who knows when it'll be there.
It'll be a fall series.
Yeah. We'll be back when a fair deal is made, and that is going to be a very, very joyous day.
Yes.
And know that we miss podcasting, and we're still here. Don't forget about us. And thank you so much for your support.
Mhm.
And I know there's a lot of exciting things that are happening, and we'll be back to talk about them in the future.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And we hopefully when that day comes, it's because a good and fair deal has been made with SAG-AFTRA and WGA as well. And yeah, we're very much looking forward to it. The things that they're striking for are incredibly important. The things that they're negotiating for, I guess I should say, wanting to negotiate for, are extremely important for the future of storytelling. And that is something we care a lot about. So ultimately, this is just a blip on on the history of Sky Talkers, on the history of like content creation and stuff like that. I hope that doesn't sound like I'm making light of it, but this is just a moment, and we will all get through it, and hopefully it will all come out better on the other end for the writers and actors and creators who make the stories that we love, because that's ultimately what we want out of this, because we love talking about the things that they create. So yeah.
And talking to them and talking about them.
Yeah.
And everything like that. So.
Talking to them and talking about them. That sounded a little gossipy, but
well, sometimes it is,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Talking about their work and what they're doing and how they're thinking about their work as well. So you guys can follow us on social media if you want to stay more up to date with what we're doing or kind of what's happening with the strike. And we'll put in some links about the strike itself and ways that you can donate to those who are striking if you're able to. But The podcast is still on Twitter at Sky Talkers Pod, Instagram, TikTok, all those places. Our personal handles at Clarity and at Caitlin Flesher. We probably won't be talking about Star Wars on our personal handles as well. But if you want to follow us for the other stuff we're doing, you can. And yeah, if you are interested in checking out our Patreon, we are going to try to put out some non-Star Wars related episodes there. So that is a good place if you want to hear a little bit more from us. But also you can get access to our Discord through our Patreon, where people are able and are still talking about all things kind of going on right now in the Star Wars world. So those are all good places to find us.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the other side.
See you soon.